Now, a couple months ago, I told a story about what happened on January 13th, 2018 at 8:07 a.m. in Hawaii. At that time, there was a warning that was sent out across all of Hawaii through television, through radio, and across all cell phones saying that there was an intercontinental missile warning. And at that time, there's a lot of tension between North Korea and the United States. And so that warning goes out saying that this is not a warning, there is a bomb coming to Hawaii. Now, I told the story. What happened was, for 38 minutes, people in Hawaii assumed that they were about to be destroyed by this bomb, which they imagined to be a nuclear bomb coming from North Korea. Turns out it was just someone who messed up at their job. Everyone has messed up at their job. Not everyone has made people think an entire state that they're going to be destroyed by a nuclear bomb, but we've all been there, right? Maybe not. Nevertheless, that happened. Now, 38 minutes later, they send out a message saying, hey, sorry about that, our bad, no bomb. Okay, but during that time, I told the story a couple months ago, during that time, there was one couple in Hawaii that runs this ocean research organization, saw the warning, and they have a boat that their organization has. They hop on the boat and they start going as far away from the island as possible. The problem was they have an entire team that works for them that started texting going, hey, where is this couple that has taken the boat and left us on the island to be destroyed by a North Korean nuclear bomb? Now, they get so far away from the island that they lose cell phone service. And so they stay out there for an extended period of time. And when they notice their home has not been destroyed by a nuclear bomb, as one does, they decide they're gonna come back home. And as they came back home, all of a sudden their phone starts to blow up from all these messages of their friends going, hey, where did they go? And second of all, why did they leave us to die, right? Now, I told the story a few months ago, and some of you said, I can kind of relate to that. Even if there was no bomb involved, there was a nuclear reaction when you came home after the infraction that you did. Some of you have experienced this. Some of you have forgotten to get the kids. And so they're done with school, you're supposed to pick them up, and you just forget until you get a text message while you're at work going, where are you? You're supposed to pick up the kids 30 minutes ago. And you come back home, and it is like the Cold War in your house. Some of you have had a situation where your roommate's keys end up in your bag and you decide to go home to your parents' house for the weekend, and what goes with you but your roommate's keys as well. They're not too happy to see you when you return home that Sunday evening. Some of you have had a situation where for some reason you took your husband's driver's license out of his wallet the night before he has a flight the next morning. So when he gets to the Austin airport, he tries to check on his flight and he misses his flight because you have his ID. Now, each and every one of you can relate to the struggles of coming back home. Now, but each and every one of those examples are understandable, they're excusable, they're explainable because there was simply an accident, a miscommunication. But what happens when the reason for why you left and why there's tension and why home feels like the Cold War, and it's not understandable, excusable, or explainable? Now, throughout history, the story of coming back home is probably the oldest one that we have. What many people believe to be the oldest story in Western civilization dates back to 8 BC. It's the story of the Odyssey. Story of Odysseus ultimately just trying to come back home, and that dates all the way back to 8 BC. So ever since Scott was in kindergarten, people have been telling this story of trying to come back home. But it's not just in the Odyssey, it's not just there, it's everywhere. It's Dorothy who's having to remind herself that there's no place like home. There's Nemo who's trying to find home, and then there's E.T. who's simply trying to phone home. It's the oldest story in the book, and it's one of the only things that can explain some unexplainable behaviors. I had a friend who made a decision professionally that didn't make sense to many people. The decision didn't match up with kind of the American standard for how we're supposed to do things. He went from one church to another church that was roughly half the size, And according to the American metrics for how we make career moves, it didn't add up until people found out that the reason he did that is because he wanted to be home, closer to his parents, including a father who was sick. Going home makes sense. It's the oldest story in the book, yet it doesn't mean it's always easy. Because sometimes when we're coming back home, we're not like the conquering victor, like Odysseus, or the loving son who sacrifices to move back home. And sometimes the issues are not understandable, explainable, or excusable, like a simple miscommunication. Sometimes coming back home is so problematic because our story feels more like the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son who left home, who wronged everyone, who takes half of his father's wealth and wastes it, who wastes everything that he's been given. And to come back home is anything but easy because there's no explanation that's going to wipe away what's transpired. And the thing about the distant country, the slide to the distant country, it's an easy downhill slope. But to come back home, it's this troublesome trek back uphill. Because no matter how much we want there to be some shortcut that we can circumvent the adversity that we've created, the same road that we take out of town is the road we have to take back in. And it's problematic because what we often find on that journey is a villain, someone standing in the way. So if you have your Bible, Luke chapter 15, let me start reading this morning, starting in verse 25. If you're physically able, would you please stand for the reading of God's word? Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." The word of the Lord, please be seated. So the older brother says, this son of yours has wasted everything, and now you're throwing him a big party. And it makes no sense to me because I've been here working like a slave. And this son doesn't deserve it. This son doesn't deserve to be treated even like a son anymore. Because to the older brother, to be part of the family is something that you have to upkeep. It is like a membership at a country club. You have to keep paying it to be a part of the family. And the way that you pay your dues to be a part of the family is your good performance. You do the right things, you say the right things, you act the right way, you do the right work. The father doesn't see it that way. The father says this to the older brother in verse 32. He said, "But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." He refers to him as this brother of yours, which is the opposite of what the older brother uses to describe him. Look back in verse 30. In verse 30, this is what the older brother says about him. He refers to him as this son of yours. He doesn't see him as a brother anymore. You know, this is your son, but it's not my brother. Because to the older brother, to be part of the family, you got to pay your dues. You got to perform and do the right thing. You see, the older brother prefers the clean lines of legalism over the messiness of grace. And the younger brother clearly didn't pay his dues. And the clean line of legalism says you're not even part of the family anymore. This is older brother thinking. And unfortunately, you've seen this. You've experienced this. You've heard this. I was once at a church where one of the students got pregnant. So this teenage girl was trying to do the right thing after having done the wrong thing. So this teenage girl is pregnant, and she's going to keep the baby and do her best to do the right thing after she had clearly done something wrong. Well, the leaders of the church looked at the normal process for what happens when someone's pregnant, which is the church throws a baby shower for the expecting mother. And they made the decision that this girl didn't get a baby shower. They were not going to throw a party for her. Their excuse was they didn't want to encourage the other teenagers to get pregnant by throwing them a baby shower. I didn't realize many students decided they wanted to not have prom, but a party of 40-year-olds giving out diapers instead of being with their friends, but maybe that's what some of them had experienced in the past. I am clearly being sarcastic there. But they say, we're not going to celebrate, we're not going to throw a party for this girl because she's done the wrong thing. See, the older brother mentality isn't just in the story, it's all over the place. And sadly, many of you have experienced this, where you did the wrong thing and someone said, we can't throw a party for you. And one of the things that makes it so hard about coming back home is because there's someone that says, for you to be part of the family, you got to pay the dues with your right behavior. And you didn't. And we're going to choose the clean lines of legalism over the messiness of grace. So we don't want you here. Older brother thinking makes it so hard to come back home when you hear it. The problem, though, is you don't always hear it or you expect to hear it. If you go back a few verses in the story, let's go earlier in the prodigal son story in verse 18. This is when the prodigal son is in the distant country. He's in the pig pen of his own failure, and he has this realization. He says, I will get up and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. He says, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. I can't be a part of the family anymore. Now, there's this thing that happens sometimes in movies where you have one actor who plays multiple roles. Mike Myers has done this, Eddie Murphy has done this. But the best example of this, and I think if you know pop culture, you know the best example of this is this scene right here. Let's take a look at this picture. If you know what I'm talking about, I would say put it in Facebook, but Facebook is down. This is Jaleel White in the most important show from my childhood, Family Ties. And on the left, this is Steve Urkel, obviously the same actor. He is somewhat awkward, socially struggles, but they have this amazing plot twist where his cool cousin, do you know his name, anyone? Stefan, I know you, yes, you know things in the back there. Stefan shows up, and he's the cool, debonair guy. But it's the same person playing both roles. Family Ties didn't start this. Our modern movies didn't start this. It's been going on since the beginning. Go back to the prodigal son. This is Luke 15. The prodigal son says, I'm no longer worthy to be your son. The older brother thinking isn't just in the older brother, but the prodigal has it too. Because older brother thinking says, I'm only able to be part of the family if I pay my dues. And my dues are good performance, saying the right thing, doing the right thing. An older brother thinking says it's better to have the clear lines of legalism over the messiness of grace. And the prodigal son is both the prodigal and he has older brother thinking as well. He plays both roles. And unfortunately, I can imagine many of us do the exact same thing. Where the reason why it's hard for us to come back home isn't just because we might run into some older brother saying, hey, you're not part of the family anymore, but because we run into older brother thinking in our own head. That for whatever reason, we have been conditioned to think, I can't come back home. I haven't done enough. And so we stay in the distant country. So we stay there. And we don't have to go anywhere else to hear older brother thinking than our own head. There was a woman once who had messed up her life. Kids didn't want to talk to her. Obviously, her husband wanted nothing to do with her. And she tried to rationalize that it was okay. I don't need it anymore. My family, they don't want anything to do with me, and that's okay. And she sounded kind of like the kid who tries out for the band, works all summer, practices, tries out for the band, and they say, you didn't make it. And so afterwards, the kid says, you know what, I didn't want to be in the band anyway. Who wants to be in the band? Well, the answer is you wanted to be in the band. But you want to just pretend like it's not a big deal. She sounded just like that. Oh, my family doesn't want me. I messed up. There's no way for me to get back home. Because all she wanted was someone to say, actually, there is a way to come back home. There's a way to come back home. And as soon as someone told her that, there was like a light that went off in her eyes. Because she didn't think it was possible. A lot of times we as Christians talk about, we're going to preach about sin. Let's talk about sin. Obviously, there's a point where Christians need to say what is right and what's wrong. I get that. But Christians, really, we don't preach about sin. We preach about a God whose love never gives up on you. We preach about a heavenly parent who says, no matter where you are and what you've done, I'm here for you. We talk about sin, sure, but we preach about the love of God which leads to repentance, because most of us need to hear one simple thing, that when we are in the distant country, when we are in the pig pen, that we need to hear there is a way back home. Because there are far too many older brothers, whether they're outside of our head or in our own head, saying, you can't come back home. And what we need to hear is that there is a Father who is desperate for you just to make one step, and the Father will run after you, because that's what love is. Life will tell us one thing, but love says there is a way to come back home, because love doesn't bend and love doesn't move. Love doesn't change. Love is always there. Shakespeare said in Sonnet 116, love is not love which alters when alliteration it finds, or moves with the remark when it is remarked, but it is an ever-present source. It doesn't move, it doesn't bend, it stays there. He goes on to say, it looks at every tempest and is not shaken. It is the star for every wandering bark. It says it looks at every storm and it doesn't move. It sees every wandering bark, every wandering ship, and it is like a star that stays constant. Love doesn't move. It's constant. It's always there for you. And that's what Jesus is trying to say with the story. In Luke chapter 15, he tells story after story after story that tries to say one simple thing. Jesus has the religious leaders say, how could you be with the sinners? And Jesus says, well, I can't like this. Because imagine a shepherd has 100 sheep and 99 are home, but one is gone. Will not the shepherd in his love go find the one sheep and celebrate when it comes back home? And then Jesus says, it's like a widow who has 10 coins, but loses one. And so she turns her house upside down to find the one coin. Will she not celebrate when she finds the one coin? And then Jesus says, it's like a father who has 2 kids. One stays home and one is lost. And when the one comes home, won't the father celebrate? Jesus says, love is not love which alters when alliteration it finds. Love isn't love if it moves, if it changes. And for many of us, we've listened far too much to older brother thinking that says love is only love if you follow the clean lines of legalism. That love is only love if you perform the right things to keep your dues paid. But older brother thinking says it's about you that keeps you a part of the family. And the Father says it's about me. The Father says, I am the reason you're in the family. And every person knows this. When you joined your family, whether you were adopted or your mother gave birth to you, you're part of the family, not because you did your chores, not because you earned, not because you filled out a form and applied to be part of your family. You're part of your family because what your parents did for you. And God, as your heavenly parent, is no different. You're welcomed home, not because what you've done, but because what God has done for you. So don't forget to remember it. Don't forget to remember it. The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy has to almost like keep reminding herself that there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Some of us need to remember the same thing. We know what the distant country is like. We know what the pig pen is like. What we need to remember is what home is like. There's no place like home. Because at home, you are welcome. You are accepted. And everything that God has is yours. So don't forget it. Because love doesn't keep a record of wrong. But life does. We know 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that love keeps no record of wrong, but unfortunately, life does. Life remembers when you've been given something, you've been given an inheritance, and you waste it. And you want to come back home, but guess what? At home, half of the inheritance is probably half of the property at home. You sold it and you wasted it. So when you get back home, it feels different. It might look different. When the prodigal son comes back home, there probably isn't all the property that was there before. We don't know, but maybe some of the acreage is gone. Some of the animals are gone. But he still comes back home because home is where his father is. And some of us have thrown aside the inheritance that we've been given. We have squandered the life that we've been given. And it's easy to stay distant, whether it's the voice in our head saying you're not welcome back home, or because we look and go, home isn't what it used to be. But what you need to remember is that you're always welcome there. And what makes it good isn't how many animals are there, isn't the acreage that's there. It's because God is there. So would you remember there's no place like home? And that the God who knit you together in your mother's womb has welcomed you from the very beginning. That you don't have to pay the dues to get in. And that God doesn't live in a world in which the clean lines of legalism are chosen over the messiness of grace. The Father says, you're always welcome home. And I celebrate, like a shepherd who found his one lost sheep, like the widow who finds her one lost coin, or like a father who celebrates his one lost son. And that's why there's no place like home. So would you remember that?